I wanted to start by giving Amanda a chance to properly introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's good to meet everyone. Thanks everyone for taking the time. Yeah, so I think I guess to sum up who I am or my career, I started out in journalism. So I used to work for paid content and at GigaOM, which was the OG digital media news and tech news sites. So I was there for a number of years, mostly doing behind the scenes production and editing work. And then I ended up pivoting my career towards content marketing. So I worked at direct to consumer snack company NatureBox for a little while. And then I joined Fitbit several years ago, where I was one of the earliest B2B marketing hires where we focused on selling devices and software to other employers so that they could run corporate wellness programs. So I was there for a number of years. And then more recently, I moved over to Growth Machine, which is an SEO and content creation agency. We do SEO, content creation, and link building. And then more recently, we've started to tiptoe into YouTube strategy and production for our clients. So this is my first time actually working for an agency, although I'm not client facing, and then really just taking a lot of my content marketing experience and content creation experience to an agency to elevate us as a brand. So super excited to be here because I feel like at my core, I'm a writer, but just more recent in the second half of my career has been more focused on proper marketing and content distribution.
Amazing. That's something I'm really excited to talk about because I think it is great to think outside the box. And even Natavidad and Growth Machine starting to really invest in YouTube, I think is really intriguing because certainly a channel that I've overlooked, certainly a channel that I don't think much about. So I'm excited that you have a much broader perspective than only having written blog posts for X years. What I want to do, I will be our timekeeper here. I have my literal physical kitchen timer. And whoever wants to kick us off, please share any challenges you have with growth, any specific questions you're thinking through. And we have a manageable number of folks. So yes, dude, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I can go. It's a little cold out here, so I got to be quick so I can put my hand back in my pocket. Yeah, so this might be a tricky question because it has not a lot to do with SEO, but like Stu's part of that ship 30 for 30. I think there's a couple other people in this group. But if you're making a practice of doing like a daily thought or just to be writing and creating like meaningful written content, but that stuff doesn't really have any SEO juice whatsoever because they're all over the place. They're like sub 500 words. They're not long, but eventually they'll make a web of like your ideas and how you think. But we just don't know what that is yet. And there's no kind of real intent behind why you're creating them other than to be creating content. So all that kind of as backstory, what ways do you think would be are like underutilized for actually finding those early readers and getting that in the hands of people who are maybe thinking about the same things as you so then you can like bounce ideas off each other? Or if there are like channels where that kind of promotion is encouraged, stuff like that. That's a way to start things off. Can you hear everything I'm saying?
Yeah, that was
Okay,
great. And I was taking some notes too. One way I would think about that too is doing what you guys are already doing by joining communities like this. I think communities in general are really under-leveraged resource for content distribution. And I think there are also ways that you can go about it, whether it's here where you're asking people for feedback on your writing or just putting out a simple ask of, hey, can you guys share this? But I think there are now just a lot of really different kinds of communities, from content creation to content marketing to people who are hosting podcasts and they want other people to share them. So there's that. I also think just really leveraging your social media channels, not as a way to promote your content, but think of it as sharing and sharing other people's content too. And Stu, I know you do a really good job of this too, but really trying to add value. So if you think about your content, like less about, oh, I want to write and share this, or I have something to say, think about it. The way I think about it is I assume people don't care what I have to say and that I have to earn it every single time. So fun to be me. But I think about that when I write something new, because I think, why would someone else want to share this? What outcome are they going to get? How does this benefit them in any way? So try to think less about how it benefits you, more about how it benefits the reader or the potential sharer. And also just Twitter's really good for this. And I know I'm going to get shit for this, but depending on maybe your overall goals, I would argue that LinkedIn is also a really good place for this, because LinkedIn is a channel where there's more content demand than there is supply. And it's a lot easier to go viral on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you have, when I'm sure most of you are on LinkedIn, when you log in, you probably see a bunch of content from people you don't know, or you're seeing like, you might be seeing like, share, like this post, and you don't know who wrote that. The LinkedIn algorithm tries to just push out content to people. So you'll get a lot more impressions more easily. People will look at it. And then similar to Twitter, LinkedIn doesn't really like it when you take people off platform, like with a link. Try to think about how you can repurpose your content into the medium in which you're posting. So things like Stu, you guys have been doing, I know that you've been doing your atomic essays for a while, and you've been sharing screenshots of your essays. I would venture to guess that on Twitter even, that you're getting more engagement than when you post a link to your post that goes onto your website, because I think Twitter's algorithm will give more favor to rich media like a photo or a video. And you might be getting, if you go to your Twitter analytics, I would guess that you're seeing more impressions, maybe more clicks, just general higher engagement.
I'll vouch for LinkedIn as well. It's the reach is still there. It's not like it went away after Gary Vee started yelling about it. And also the word length is more forgiving, I find. Like I can actually tell a story on LinkedIn, whereas Twitter is give me the goods right away. And so I'm not very good at Twitter writing yet, but over the last year, like LinkedIn has been where I'm doing it, and I can vouch that if you are there pretty frequently, you'll get crazy reach.
Yeah. Totally
That's
true.
awesome.
And I think there are a lot of people who post on LinkedIn who are not very good. Like they just do it all the time. So they've over time built up audiences.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks a lot, Amanda.
Fantastic. Cool. Who's next? You're welcome to unmute and take the floor. Yeah, Josh.
Hey. Hi, Amanda. Nice to have you here. So my question is, I'm also doing the ship 30 for 30 in an effort to peel the onion, find my niche, that kind of thing. And it's still a little early to tell, but I already am noticing that there's a super wide variance in the amount of things that I cover. Like I jump around so much. And
what do you cover?
Like pretty much anything from like programming to math to productivity to marketing to, I think I had a physics one at one point, economics, finance. And that's not to say that I'm anywhere close to expert in any of those things, but I'm interested, I learn about it, and I post about it. But I guess what I'm noticing within myself is generally if I have a prompt, a really specific prompt, it's really easy for me to write specifically to that prompt and to really focus myself. And the strategy that I'm going with right now is, okay, I'm gonna do like a 7-day trial of refs, however you pronounce it, and do a whole bunch of keyword research so that I can have basically a list of keywords that are like the sweet spot between, hey, I can rank for this, but it also has some traffic. And then once I do that giant, massive amount of research, I'll pick the best ones, and then the trial will be over, and I'll just write about that for the next 6 months or something. And I guess what I'm wondering is, I've never done like anything SEO related, and that seems like a reasonable strategy to me, but is there anything I'm not thinking about? Is there any like words of caution or, hey, you also want to do this kind of thing? Maybe I'm worried about, I don't know, algorithm changes or like something I'm not thinking about.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great approach. So I assume that you are publishing on your personal site or on a website?
Correct.
Yeah. No, I think it's super smart to go into however you say it. I say AREFs, I think. I think that's a really good way to go about it too, though, because you're also, in doing that research, you're also looking for, is anyone even interested in this content? Like theoretically, is anyone searching for it? I think that's a really good starting point. And then figuring out why it's interesting to you and writing it in the way that you want to write it. If you are thinking about getting your content to rank, like on Google, I would think about using a tool like ClearScope or like Dashword. There's also one called ClickFlow, which is a little bit different, but I would start with ClearScope or Dashword. And those are platforms where you could run a quick analysis of your topic. You just plop it in there, it generates a report, and then you can write directly into there as an editor, like treat it as a Google Doc, so to speak. or you can just copy and paste your content into it, and it'll grade your content based on the top performing content out there on that topic. So if you had your post on something about, something about programming, right? Like you might plop in your headline or like your draft headline as the analysis or keyword analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to search for like the top 5 performing pieces. And as you write your content, it's going to grade it against that. What that helps you with is it helps you uncover certain keywords or certain minor topics within that broader topic that you should consider exploring so that you can rank higher. So an example, I'm trying to think of a quick example. An example might be like green tea, like health benefits of green tea, right? There are all kinds of health benefits there, but I happen to know that one of the top ranking pieces of content includes something about flavonoids. So then maybe if you're writing that post, you should think, oh, should I write a small section on flavonoids to, help this content rank higher? And then it gives you a letter grade up to A+. I think ClearScope gives you A+. It really taps into your most competitive self. What these tools do not show you is the quality of your writing. So it'll show you like, oh, you're using this keyword a little too much. It might show you that, but it won't show you if you have a well-structured sentence. So that's where being a good writer or having a good editor will be really helpful there. But tools like that should be able to make an impact over time.
Nice.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
just
then-
pasted it.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw Josh, you had another question on LinkedIn. You asked about, can you trick the algorithm by posting a picture of your essay and linking it out in the comment? I think you can. What I've seen though is that before, I think maybe last year, just a while ago, LinkedIn's algorithm used to punish people who brought people off platform. But my understanding now is that it won't hurt the algorithm. Basically, it won't hurt your algorithm, but users might not want to click through. So I think posting a picture of your essay is a good idea in that the image will get noticed more just as people are scrolling through a sea of text. And it might just be more of a matter of people don't want to click away. So not that LinkedIn is trying to punish you, but just that users might not follow that behavior.
Amazing. Just one quick follow-up. We have ClearScope. What was the other tool that you mentioned?
The other one is
Dashboard. Cool.
Yeah. Both are great. ClearScope is the original and it's definitely the standard, and we use it at Growth Machine for our clients. Dashboard is very similar, but they have a couple free options. I love ClearScope and the team there is awesome, but Dashboard is similar and it gives you some free reports. So I have to say that here.
Awesome. Amazing. Good. That's the scrappy option.
Yeah.
All right. Who is next? You're welcome to unmute. And yeah, Charlie.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
So I have a very specific question about an essay that I'm working on. It's my first long form essay, and I really want to get it into people's hands because up until this point, I've just been writing short essays and posting them and not really worrying about the distribution too much. But this is like the big one for me. So I'm just going to tell you about it and then you can tell me your thoughts. The first thought I used to have for many years when I woke up in the morning was the number on the scale. And the last thought I had when my head hit the pillow each night was the number on the scale. And I never thought that I had an eating disorder. I think because it never felt like a life-threatening kind of thing, but I was consumed by negative thoughts and I was very lonely and very sad. It was a very unhappy place to be. So I wrote about my journey to a healthy body image, and I include lots of personal things like counting calories and throwing up and the tricks I used and alcohol abuse and drug abuse. And my hope with this essay is to achieve 3 things. One is that people who aren't really aware that they're living like this can have a light bulb moment, like that, this is not a way to live. And then 2 is that by being vulnerable with my stuff, I hope to create a safe space for people who have gone through an experience similar or are going through something similar to be able to talk about it without the shame or embarrassment. And then 3rd is that I hope that I can create hope for other people that there is a way out. And even if it is a really long process, it's totally worth it, because it's now that I realize like I did have an eating disorder It was just not at the extreme one end of the spectrum that people think of when they think of eating disorders. And because of that, I diminished it, I downplayed it, and I normalized it. But no one should go through their life consumed by negative thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, and congratulations too on crystallizing all of this and putting it into a long form post, because it's really hard to do. How long have you worked on that?
It's been about 5 months. I worked on it until August, and then I just had my first son, so I haven't worked on it since he was born.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
But yes, I'm hoping to publish it in February or March.
Yeah. Why February or March? Just that's when you think it'll be done.
I'll be completely honest with you. I am a mentor for an online group called Rite of Passage, and it'll be at the end of the cohort after I've made more connections with people, and I'm hoping that I'll have more of a presence at that point, so it feels like it'll be a good time.
Yeah, that's a good idea. One idea came to mind, and this is from my thinking about from my days at Fitbit when we like to hear customer, success stories. Did you use any sort of tool or service to help you through that journey?
I used a book.
Oh, cool. It might be worth reaching out to that author too, to say, hey, you really changed my life with this, and I wrote about this here, and I just wanted to share my story with you. I think people genuinely love to hear stuff like that and how they make an impact.
Cool.
That's awesome. And then I also imagine there are probably a lot of subreddits where people would want to learn from you or read that article.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, love the idea of, I always under index on this, finding the people who are influential for you. They're going to be thrilled to hear that they could be helpful.
Yeah.
They often have a big audience. I love that idea. I'm actually jotting a note for myself. Cool. Nick, I think you are up next. If you want to take the floor.
Thanks for being here, Amanda. Appreciate it. I'm a big fan of Nats. He's a great person. So I am trying to figure out my SEO strategy for this coming year. And I've been doing something by default, and I'm not sure if it is smart in SEO terms or not. I basically, my real sole goal is to just grow an email list. I think that email list will probably stay on Substack, but I'd like the flexibility to take it off if need be. And in my view is that Substack posts are better for generating email signups than blog posts and other things. Now, I think there may be people who are better at writing blog posts that drive email signups, but I think there's something about the UX of Substack that sort of just lends itself to people signing up. And so my thought is trying to build SEO using my sort of Substack blog. I'll post links just so you have a sense of what I'm talking about. So I have this newsletter. I send it out twice a month, and there are two formats. There's one that's like an interview format, and then one that is more of a long essay and then a bunch of riffs on content. I repost those essays to my personal site, which is on Ghost. And that is an SEO strategy that I've concocted with very little input with best practices, and just trying to understand if my goal is I'd like to drive more SEO traffic to Substack. I think some questions I have are am I thinking about this in the right way? And secondly, I think I should think about bringing Substack under my personal site's domain, but I'm not sure about that. So curious what you think.
These are good questions. And I think for some of this, I'll be frank here, I might have to follow up on some of the additional details. But as far as my understanding is that, to your point, Substack is great for building an email list because of the UX of it. And I think just by the nature of it, when people are going to Substack, they expect that they might need to subscribe or that they should subscribe. There's that. But my understanding is that Substack is not great for SEO because you don't own the traffic yourself. I think Nat would say in a perfect world, you would just grow your own site, like your own personal site, and then use ConvertKit to grow your email list. That way you're just in full control of everything and you own everything. You could also, the one way I might do this is just focusing on Substack, like focusing on that and growing your email list, because a really good thing about Substack is that you ultimately own the data, right? You can always export all the content or all the subscribers and then put them into whatever email service you would want to use in the future. So there's that. You could do that, and then also just focus on your personal site with separate SEO goals. So maybe this is more work, but maybe you would, maybe a bad example, but maybe you would use Substack for maybe shorter form posts or posts that are like 500 words. And then you go into more detail on your personal site. So that way you're offering two kind of unique forms of content with different value props, because if you're posting that more longer, more thorough content on your personal site, that's where you're going to get the SEO juice. And you could think of Substack as another content creation platform that's really just your distribution platform. So I might think about doing this kind of twofold strategy. And then maybe you'd want to stay on Substack, or maybe over time you'll change your mind and want to use a different kind of email service. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, that's great. And I think one thing I've been wondering is, like, Substack now allows you to choose your own domain. You can pay about $50 for it. That's and right. From an SEO perspective, does it make more sense to try to bring my Substack page into my own website, or make it a separate domain? I'm using all the I don't know the right words for this, but
I think it's best to do what is most sustainable for you, like from a workload perspective, because ultimately SEO is a lot of work. Like it takes a lot of work to produce really good quality content that will rank high. So I might think about it as, if you wanted to use the custom domain in Substack and then focus all your efforts there, that would probably make the SEO worth it ultimately, or just keeping it separate. But I am going to do a little more digging into SEO and Substack, and I'll confer with my team and I'll get back to you on any more details on that.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. Anyone is welcome to take the floor. Drum roll. Because I was telling Amanda before the call, I have enough questions personally to keep us busy, but this is for anyone else. Yes, Steven, go for it.
Yeah, so this is going to be like a little unfocused, just because this all feels like very new to me, because I've been doing a lot of music writing for publications, and I typically think in terms of what interests me and the idea, and then, like, doing a review or an interview, and it's for other people's websites. So I guess my question is, if it's better as saying to own the traffic and to have my own place for this type of work. And then I guess the attraction of other publications is that their traffic is there and their promotion, where if it's just me, it's just me. So I guess just your thoughts on writing for publications, like small niche blues publications, where the audience is already small and quite possibly isn't aware that the internet exists, or if it's better to grow my own thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I think it's a really good question though, because those publications are other creation and distribution platforms. So I think that in a perfect world, you would have your own personal site. You would have it on some kind of managed host. Maybe it's like Ghost, maybe it is WordPress, or I used WP Engine for mine. But in a perfect world, I think you would have your personal site where you would really dive in deep into the topics that interest you most, the things that you really want to write about. And that you would also write for these other publications and you'd lean on those as more of kind of audience building and more distribution. That way, over time, you're building up your personal brand, so to speak. But for these publications if they're online, then they can link back to your personal site, which will give you a little bit of domain authority in terms of how your website ranks in Google. But also, I would treat this personal site as also just your portfolio, right? So like over time, as you're maybe pitching to publications or writing for more, you can always point back to your personal site and say, oh, here's where my long form content is, or my most thorough content, or whatever it is that you write about with respect to music specifically. because I would just imagine that there's a lot to say there, and there are a lot of topics you can dive into. And where a lot of publications you're probably writing for, they might be known for certain areas of music where it might make more sense to write something a little more short form there and then write in more detail on your personal site. I'm also just a big proponent of owning what you can own, like owning as many channels as you can. And I also say this as someone who started her personal site pretty late. Like I started my personal site just a couple months ago. So if you were to Google my name, it'll come up on like page 3 and it's embarrassing. But where I really wish I did this sooner is that it would just gain domain authority over time just by existing for longer. And I would just have full ownership of all the content, because an issue with writing for these publications is if one of them closes shop, then your content might be gone. And that's a bummer. So I just like the idea of having full control of your main kind of messaging for yourself, and then tapping into other owned audiences to expand your reach.
Amazing answer. It's great. Well, great. We're right at time. So anybody else? Yeah, Ryan, please.
Amanda, great to see you in the video.
I know, it's good to see you and your daughter.
I know, my daughter was making a cameo appearance. She still is here, and she doesn't understand the concept of workday, apparently. She doesn't take compound seriously. And welcome to LA. I saw you.
Thank you.
So actually, Charlie and I have a similar idea here. I'm writing about a form of childhood trauma I just got diagnosed with in the last couple of years, and how I healed myself. And okay, please, we get it. Thank you. I'm always this calm. Take my word for it. Please, Julia. So I ended up like writing this like very emotional like first essay, and then the rest of them are more like my own personal anecdotes. Like I use like a lot of stuff that's healing, that's not from like your therapist or psychiatrist necessarily. It's breath work and sound healing and like different psychedelics. And so I know there's like a lot of key words here that I'm like totally going to be early on, I think, because it's just like breath work is fringy, but it really helped me. And sound healing sounds a little like it's spooky and weird, and psychedelics even now, they're just becoming more in vogue. And
yeah.
I just have the trouble because all my essays are very personal. It's, you know, how I felt, like the process I went through. They're not like how-to guides. But I want to qualify against terms that are more like, what is breath work? What is sound healing? And so do you have any advice for like how to really think more strategically about my story? Because I still think it could work. What is breath work? And then it's my experience. However, I also don't want to, like you're saying, like you alluded to earlier, I don't want to just write something that I either don't enjoy or I don't believe in, or I want to find that healthy balance between like how to rank really well for stuff that I think I could potentially show good results for, but also you don't want to like sell out like the story itself. And so I'm using like headers even and some other things, and I'm going to do a deeper SEO dive coming up, but I'd love any advice you have just based on what I told you.
Yeah. I also have to say congratulations on the progress that you've made just personally. I think there's a way though you can sprinkle in the how-to guide type of content without selling out and without pandering to that. We've done this with some of our clients too at Growth Machine, where they have main messaging, we'll just call it messaging, that they want to be known for, but that's not really going to rank well in content. So we'll create a kind of separate, I don't want to say separate because it's one website ultimately, or one blog, where we'll create content that will serve the needs of SEO so that their website as a whole will get seen. So I still think there's a way you can do both. Like maybe you can think about your content as like 2 tracks. The first track being the things you really want to say and how you want to say them and sharing your personal story. And then the separate track just being more education focused. So a way of being like, here's what breath work really is. Here's when you might need it. It might be, it's not to be confused with mindfulness, because mindfulness is this other thing. Or maybe they're very, and then you could say that they're similar in these ways. That way you can capture the traffic from those terms like breath work. I think it's also worth tapping into Ahrefs to do some early keyword research strategy. Something I think is a good idea is, I know Ahrefs can be expensive. I would do a free trial. I think you get the first week free and do as much upfront research as you can there. Sorry, Ahrefs. They are a great tool. But that way, whether or not you really need to pay for it or how much you need it, because then you can get a sense for I think breathwork is a good example here of, oh, is anyone even searching for this? And maybe there aren't a lot, and maybe there are a lot. I don't actually know, but there might be a way to think about what are the related topics to breathwork. And if it is mindfulness, maybe that could be a related one, but maybe something like mindfulness has more search volume. It might be harder to rank for it, but it might be something to consider. But something like breathwork, I do feel like is probably a really good example of something that might not. My hunch is just that it probably doesn't have like tons of search volume, but it probably has, but the people who are looking for it really care about it, and because they want it, they want to learn how to do it. So I think it's a good opportunity to capture that traffic. And then as you build out this library of content, of the first track of why it's meaningful to you, second being education focused, over time your website is going to look like a thoughtful resource for these topics. And so as you continue to build out, I think Google will recognize that. The only thing I would say as a heads up on that is, I think this was last summer, there was an SEO update or Google update where they started to punish websites that were not authorities on health, talking about health. Now, this is a separate kind of area, so this is where I'd be a little bit less worried. But if you were to get into territory of saying sound healing can prevent cancer, like stuff like that.
That's my thesis.
That's the thesis. How to fight cancer with sound
that's
healing.
my first essay. Amazing. You knew that. Yeah, totally.
But for stuff like that, I think Google has tried to recognize when something's not a medical resource.
Okay. Yeah, definitely not a medical resource. I actually made that and say I'm not a doctor, like on each post at the bottom to say, clearly this is not advice. Please, I'm just writing my own experience.
Yeah. And then if you decide to build up the how-to content, that's also a good opportunity to link out to medical resources if it's applicable, or reach out to experts for quotes. So you're also highlighting like medical expertise. I think that's going to help you over time.
I'm actually like working on a page right now that's like a list of links that are like guides for trauma recovery through ancient methods.
Oh, cool.
And this is my last small question, but do you have any advice for like how to index for those, or to how to share those, or like formatting for like pages, like a resource page?
I think so. You said these were sound bites? Is that?
They're resources for like links, books, videos, podcasts. They're like trauma recovery resources that like books I've read and like practices I've done, like meditations I recommend.
Oh, that's cool. It's tough to answer because I don't know what this looks like. I'm trying to think of other helpful resources. If you're familiar with Julian Shapiro, his website, julian.com, he has a couple of resources he's a growth marketer, but where he does something maybe similar to what you're thinking about is he has resources for other things. So I would look at how he organizes some of that stuff.
Okay.
And I would also just say, I think for this kind of thing, focus on making this as organized as possible, especially on your website. That way, when Google crawls, it knows, oh, this thing here is a video. This is a video resource for this thing. This thing is a book. Like, just think of it as like how to best organize your website so that it's easy for Google to understand. And obviously for people to understand. Generally, when you're trying to serve the needs of organization, it helps people who are reading it.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Amazing. Who is next? Yeah, Roger.
Yeah, thanks. This is great. So, Amanda, I've got a question, but let me preface it with some anecdotes of what are precedents that I'm trying to imitate. The founder of Copy.ai shared a tweet saying anybody who's DM'd your Y Combinator rejection letter, DM him and he'll give you a lifetime membership to his new software. And they just, and a few weeks later here, they're like 5 times oversubscribed on the only people have placement form. I mean, just really, I'm like, wow, what a great subset of users to get, people who applied to Y Combinator. So second one was today I got a direct message on Twitter saying, look, you follow these newsletter writers. Would you like to beta test Matter, our new reader for newsletters? And I'm like, sure, man. And he had a YC link in there. So I was like, great. And then when Nick threw up his things, I thought, oh, I'm writing an article with an Airtable so people can put in what their tech stack is for publication. And I almost went to pre-populate it with Nick's stuff. And I said, no, I'll just reach out to Nick and have him answer it. And of course, you said use community when you publish. So when I go to publish this, there's going to be a lot of people who I've reached out to, who I'm going to want to put their tech stacks in, showcasing within the article how to do those things. Now, within all of that, those are three very specific kind of anecdotes that are almost one by one, doesn't really scale. And yet there's no way Paul didn't think about, hey, everybody inbound to me. I want the YC failure, which is not a big failure. They only take 1%. What a great subgroup of people to target. And likewise, I'm sure somebody can have the Twitter algorithm say, hey, this guy probably, since he's early tech, there's a lot of early stage investing, and he's following these guys, perfect person for us to reach to, probably convert me to a paying customer, first chance I get out of beta. So I'm just wondering, when you're talking about that level of specificity, like you really know the type of person you're after, not necessarily their specific tags and handles. How do you go about doing that? Because we're all early stage, and getting those people can be just tremendously valuable to our momentum.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot about stuff like, what I really like about this is the specificity of all these examples and all these people. And when I think about stuff like that, I think it's Paul Graham's essay on do things that don't scale. Sometimes that's the best way to get something started, or at least to get your first 100 true fans, or so to speak. I would think about the way I would look at that is, you said that you might not know everyone's like social media handles or where to reach each person. I would try to think about how you can go about this by channel. So identify the people you can on Twitter, and also just really leveraging Twitter advanced search. That's a really, I think, under leveraged function in Twitter, because in Twitter advanced search, you can search for things like the most liked tweets from a certain person's profile, or you can look at the most engaged tweets. And from there, I would just start with a short list of people you want to reach out to on Twitter, and then just start seeing like maybe who they follow, whose other content they interact with the most, or seeing who interacts with which other users interact with their own content the most, or like their posts most, or retweet or share it most. I think that's a really interesting way to find like-minded people and to expand your reach through that. The same kind of goes for LinkedIn, but LinkedIn doesn't have that kind of advanced search tool, which I think is really useful. And then I also just think like really like getting that short list of people and really studying what they do, or where they create content. I think you'll learn a lot by, and I'm sure you're already doing this, like going to their personal sites if they have them and reading some of the content there and seeing how they share, what they link to, who their kind of influencers are, or who their influences are. That will also open it up a little bit more in terms of who else you could reach out to. And then also over time, something I've also been trying to get better at is sending people fan mail, like the people that are on this list of yours, maybe even just reaching out to them before you have something to share. And maybe it's just a straight up, if it's someone like maybe who has a newsletter or maybe some kind of creator, just reaching out to them and saying, hey, I really like your work. It's really impactful to me for these reasons, or whatever the reason is. And then just starting to develop a relationship there, where over time, when you do launch or publish your essay, that when you get to the point of sharing it, it doesn't look like you came out of the blue to share something, that it looks a little bit more organic. And then it is, right? Because at that point you have developed a relationship with someone, and it's not going to be weird to reach out and share your own content.
Yeah, and a follow-up question on that. Beyond the newsletter, if you're trying to do communities, let's say you started a circle community, how much, and if it's a fairly open community that people can get into, does that show up at all in the search engine results, or will Google more stuff buried inside circles?
For that, no. You might get some search from like Reddit, because Reddit's a public community, but circle communities are private. So I don't think you're going to get any kind of SEO outcome from that.
Okay. Thank you.
Love that. Yeah, you're so right about the Paul Graham startup advice applying for
Yeah.
content too. Totally agree. We
Uh,
definitely have time for a couple more. Yeah,
yeah.
Lyle, floor is
Well,
yours.
what you just mentioned maybe ties into this question I have. I'm thinking of, well, I've really been searching for what my niche is. A little bit of background on me. I write like personal stories, and a lot of them have had to do with my daughter who has cerebral palsy. She's 2.5. And some of them I'm planning on repurposing or repackaging into book form eventually. But I was thinking of doing some sort of, I don't know what you would call it, like almost like a launch post in a way. And it's weird to say that, but like a kind of a declarative, like, I'm a cerebral palsy dad, and here's what that means, and here's my point of view on that. And within that, I was thinking of having some thoughts on how generally we use the term special needs, and how I feel pretty strongly that we should be more specific and be, for those of us that don't have special needs, we'd be more interested in the people that do and their specific special need, because it could be so wide ranging. So I want to be an advocate in that sense. But I was thinking of having some sort of, I haven't written it yet, but some sort of like declarative post where, I don't know what you would call it, like a sort of a beachhead, if you will. I don't know if that's the right term. And going about like launching that or getting good traffic on it on a particular day at some point. And I'm curious if you've done something similar for clients or people or whatever, and if you have any tips or tricks, or if it's just like the Paul Graham thing.
Yeah. I feel like there are a couple of different things to unpack there. I feel I'm personally super curious about more of your thoughts on the term special needs, but I feel like that could be your beachhead or that could be your niche. I think talking about that, I have a nephew who has autism, so we say special needs, but to your point, it's a very broad term. Someone with autism and someone with cerebral palsy, two very different situations there. I feel like I do feel like that's a big thing you can focus on in terms of content. Like I might think about what you're doing in terms of themes over time. If it helps to organize how you're creating this content and how you distribute it. One way I might think about it is maybe you spend the next quarter on that point, like getting that message out there. Like special needs is too vague of a term. It needs to be, this is how we need to think about it. And then from there, building an audience around that notion. Like maybe you would tweet about it a lot, join maybe find special needs Twitter if there is one, and really just join those conversations and respond to those. I think that's a good way to go about it, because I think we as content creators forget that once we say something, we think it's out there, but everyone else on the receiving end of that message, they probably need to hear it like 10 times before they hear it, before they really listen to you, or before it really sticks. So I would think about that. I would also think about the different kinds of health or medical communities that you can join. One thing I thought about was a company that it used to be called RDMD, but they have a new name, which I'm forgetting right now. But they focus on helping parents of patients or patients with very rare medical conditions and helping them to own their electronic medical records. This is a very wonky example, but a lot of how they built their company was through community and finding different communities of parents who had children with really rare genetic conditions and tapping into them and helping them, right? Helping them empower themselves by owning their medical data. So finding the opportunities like that and telling your story there, or finding ways to partner with companies like this RDMD, new name, I need to look it up. Finding companies like that who already have the resources in terms of they might already have an own content channel. They might already have events that they're doing, but joining those people who already have those audiences, I think will help you really continue to tell your story in a way that is reaching more people. And that also has me thinking, I feel like there are a lot of, and I have a kid, so there are a lot of mom communities. There are a lot of Facebook groups, a lot of different kinds of mom communities, but I feel like there are not a lot of dad communities. So I think that'd be a really interesting kind of thing to uncover or start. I think especially I just think that might be an interesting place. Yeah. I don't know if that was helpful.
No, I think it was. Yeah, it's interesting because I haven't really done much to join those kind of communities. I have joined some like CP related communities on Facebook and stuff, but they're a little all over the place, to be honest. And I also wonder though, because I've gotten great feedback from folks I know, but then also people I don't know about my writing and the story. And then, so it feels like it's applicable to people that don't even have kids even. It's just, it could be a compelling story, or they may learn something about the experience of having a child with special needs. So, but that feels like maybe too broad, obviously too broad of a target community to go after. That's not even really community, it's like everybody. So I wonder, maybe it's go more niche and then it can spread beyond that just by word of mouth or something. Yeah, I feel like I'm answering my own question.
Yeah. If there are, existing thought leaders in cerebral palsy, I would try to figure out how to align with them. If there are doctors who've written books and stuff, sometimes books have communities or movements around them. I might think about how to tap into those.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks.
Amazing. Well, does anyone want to close us out? Probably make this the last one. So if you haven't gone, you're welcome to unmute and take the floor. We'll do drum roll. Otherwise, I'm totally going to slide in a compound question because I should have asked before we started the call. Cool. So I'm going to lob one in, and anyone's welcome to unmute and cut me off here. But yes, this is, I think, truly right down your alley, given that you've been running the Growth Machine podcast. But with Compound, we do a lot of events, obviously like this, but we also do more formal like interviews where we bring on somebody and do a bit more of a podcast-y type conversation. And right to date, what we do that is like members are able to join those calls live. That's a cool, fun chance to interact with interesting people. But we do repurpose the content for kind of like putting out our bat signal into the world and finding some new writers to join us. And right now, just because we're stretched thin, I've basically just been lightly editing that, putting it up on YouTube and like setting it and forgetting it, not really doing much promotion, not really doing much to get the word out. But one of the most frequent requests we get is, hey, I'd love an audio version of this so I could just listen to it on a walk or whatever. So anyways, we're working on just turning these interviews into podcast episodes, publishing them on a standalone podcast. And the idea is to drive top of funnel, drive folks to the right folks to the Compound waitlist. But anyways, I don't really know the first thing about kind of the best way to go about promoting it, finding new listeners, getting people to even see the content. So at the risk of that being terribly open-ended, I'm just trying to think of where to start with promoting the podcast.
Yeah. I think the beauty about podcasts is that we're still in early days with it. Like metrics for podcasts suck and they don't really tell you a whole lot. We've crossed over 10,000 downloads for the Growth Machine podcast, which is super exciting to hear. Yay. But I don't know. I think, did it get us new customers? Not really. So maybe it's not great. So my point there is really just, it's a good content creation and distribution platform where you don't have to worry yet too much about whatever metrics there are because they're mostly vanity metrics. So I would use it as a place to experiment with different content formats. So I saw that you have a 1-hour episode with a recent guest there. I would think about doing some really short episodes. Like something we do on the Growth Machine podcast is I read a blog post. Like I just talk into the mic and I read the post and it becomes a mini episode. And I saw someone else do it. I thought it was cool. So I decided to copy that. And they're like 10-minute episodes. I think it's weird. I wouldn't listen to it personally, but I'm trashing my own idea. But a few people have reached out and said, oh my gosh, I love your mini episodes. Like I don't have a lot of time to read and it's so helpful that I can still get the content just by playing it, like while I do laundry. And that's been a really surprising kind of driver of our overall content growth and awareness because people have been consuming our content more. Sometimes it also just seems like a brand new piece of content where maybe someone did read the blog post and then they see the episode a few weeks later. I've been doing this. I had been publishing on the Growth Machine blog for a couple months before I started doing this with the mini episodes. I'm like 1 month behind. So you might read a blog post from us and then a month later you might see, if you subscribe to our podcast, you might see the mini episode and you probably wouldn't remember. You'd be like, oh, what's this? And you might listen. So I would think about that. Like maybe you could take snippets of these recordings, like maybe the parts where you think are most interesting or most enlightening, and then just publishing that as like a 10-minute soundbite or even 20 minutes, whatever. That might be interesting. I've also been experimenting with something called, I think it's called Wave. It's WAVE.co, where you can do like a sort of graphic with your audio and it'll caption it for you, and then posting that on Twitter. And that's nice. It's pretty easy to do. And it's free, I think. That's a good tool for that. I stopped doing that because I got lazy and it wasn't feeling like I was getting much ROI from it. But it's easy. Like you just upload a clip and then it does the caption for you, which you can edit if you want to. Not caption, sorry, subtitles. So I would do that. Yeah. And I might think about how you could do these sessions on YouTube Live. That might be interesting to do. I think you can port a Zoom webinar to YouTube Live. So
That's
there
a
might
cool
be that.
idea.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Like maybe you and one of the writers here, like just does a deep dive on like writing a post. And I would also think about, as you publish this content, I would think about this, like assuming that the person watching or listening doesn't know about Compound, just to make sure that you're super clear on what it is that this community does. Because I myself don't really know what to call this. Is this a community? Is it a collective? Not that matters a lot. Like, not that word really matters a lot, but where it might matter is just, what do you want to be known for, right? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Great advice. I'm definitely thinking about that because there's a ton of stuff, almost like what you said earlier to Lyle, like you think you say something once, but really you need to say it 10 times before it starts to stick. And so I love that idea of just being really clear about who we are. Yeah. It does go back to the talk we had talk with April Dunford about positioning.
Oh yeah.
This week.
And a good thing there, if you post it on like Twitter or LinkedIn, just, somewhere publicly regularly, you can refine your messaging over time. Like something that I have talked about a lot or written about a lot is I call it content sustainability, which is such a boring phrasing, but it's really just making your content sustainable across your marketing, across your business, finding other ways to repurpose content, finding other reasons for content. And I think when I first posted about content sustainability, nobody liked it. Nobody paid attention. It looked super wonky and weird. But when I just started saying, find ways to be sustainable, find ways to get ROI on your content, like just different kinds of related messaging, it started to stick better. And I'm getting better at talking about it. So sometimes posting or publishing more publicly forces you to refine your messaging and make it better.
I love that. Yeah, it's a good like long-term vision of just, this is just V1. You can keep iterating on this thing until it really is clear over time. And really resonates. So I know we're right at time. And Amanda, I first just want to thank you again for making the time and sharing all the hard-won wisdom. I'm sure that you have learned a lot of this by trial and error. So I appreciate you giving us some shortcuts here.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to thank everyone who joined. And I guess, Amanda, what's the best place for people to find you and follow along?
Yeah, probably my Twitter, Amanda Nat. I also had the Growth Machine Marketing Podcast. People tell me I need a premise. I need to make it a hard-hitting thing. That's not really me. So we talk about content marketing, we talk about organic growth, content creation. I think it's fun. And we have an episode with Steph Smith, which is my personal favorite episode. And Steph is awesome. It's a fun listen. And then I have a personal site where I don't publish enough, amandanat.com.
Fantastic. Cool. Thanks everyone again for joining. And I will send out the recording afterwards so we've all got it. But Amanda, thanks again for the time and wisdom.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for joining. This was fun.
Awesome. See everybody.
All right. Bye.
Yep. Bye.